What if I told you that some people believe holding hands with someone outside of your relationship is worse than sending naked photos, and that others feel an emotional affair is far more damaging than a physical one? These gray areas can make or break a relationship, especially when infidelity is involved. I'm Dr. Lisa Sabrina, urologist and pelvic surgeon, and today we're talking about sexual, emotional, and physical behaviors to understand which ones people actually consider cheating. Why does this even matter? We often assume that everyone shares the same definition of cheating, and it seems unbelievable when our partners or friends do something we consider unfaithful, but they don't see it as a big deal. These differences in perception can destroy relationships, especially when partners have very different boundaries that they've never discussed. Most people agree that sexual intercourse with someone else is obviously cheating, but there's much less agreement on more ambiguous behaviors like holding hands, sharing secrets, or going to dinner alone with someone of the opposite sex. These gray areas are where most relationship conflicts actually happen. As someone who works primarily with men, I can easily imagine how these situations can lead to major conflicts if not discussed openly. Before we get into the science, since you're already here investing time in learning how to improve your relationships, why not grab my free guide that covers the top 10 things that actually enhance pleasure, backed by science, at www.reenamalikmd.com/more pleasure.
Now, back to the science. To understand what people generally consider cheating, a team of researchers from the University of Michigan and several other institutions conducted a study on this very question. They surveyed 456 college students, about 67% of whom were women, with an average age of 19. The researchers examined 27 different behaviors to determine which ones were considered cheating in a long-term relationship. These behaviors spanned several categories: sexual behaviors like intercourse or oral sex, erotic behaviors such as texting sexual messages or watching pornography together, relationship status behaviors like holding hands or kissing, emotional bonding activities such as forming deep connections or sharing secrets, financial support like giving someone even $5, and social interactions such as brief hugs or taking road trips together. Each participant rated these behaviors on a scale from 0 to 100%, where 0 meant not cheating at all and 100 meant definitely cheating when performed with someone of the opposite sex who wasn't their partner. What made this study especially interesting is that researchers also measured two key personality traits: attachment anxiety and attachment avoidance. Attachment anxiety reflects a fear of abandonment. People with this trait constantly worry about losing their partner. Attachment avoidance, on the other hand, is the tendency to keep emotional distance and avoid intimacy. I recently discussed these attachment styles in detail with Jessica Baum on my podcast. It was fascinating to see how these patterns actually play out in real relationships. If you want to learn more about them, I highly recommend checking out that episode.
In the study, researchers used validated psychological scales to measure these traits and then analyzed how gender and attachment style influenced participants' perceptions of cheating. The results were surprising, even to the researchers. As expected, nearly everyone agreed on the obvious behaviors. Sexual activities such as intercourse, oral sex, or showering together were rated as cheating by 96 to 98% of participants. However, erotic behaviors that didn't involve direct physical contact, like sexting or emailing nude photos, were still viewed as cheating by 75–88% of participants, though not universally. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Women actually rated sexual and erotic behaviors as more indicative of cheating than men did, which contradicted the researchers' expectations. This finding challenges the traditional belief that women care primarily about emotional affairs, while men are more sensitive to sexual infidelity. Women also gave significantly higher cheating ratings to 10 different behaviors, including texting erotic messages, sending nude photos, watching pornographic movies together, holding hands, and forming deep emotional bonds, which aligns with the common perception that women value emotional connection. Interestingly, the only behavior that men rated higher was giving someone $5. Yes, you heard that right. Men were more likely than women to see giving someone $5 as cheating, which, though minor, is still fascinating. The psychology becomes even more intriguing when we consider attachment styles. People with higher attachment anxiety, those afraid of abandonment, rated 18 out of the 27 behaviors as more indicative of cheating. These individuals are more nervous and hypervigilant, viewing many behaviors as potential threats to their relationship. In contrast, people with attachment avoidance, those who keep emotional distance, showed the opposite pattern, rating sexual and erotic behaviors as less indicative of cheating. This might be because they are more likely to engage in such behaviors themselves as a way to avoid deeper intimacy. The intensity of the behavior also affected how likely participants were to label it as cheating. For example, kissing on the lips was seen as more serious than kissing on the cheek. Giving someone $500 was considered more serious than giving $5, and hugging for more than 10 seconds was rated as more serious than a brief hug. Sleeping in the same bed was viewed as worse than simply staying in the same hotel room. Researchers referred to this as the signal strength effect. The stronger the signal of romantic or sexual interest, the more likely people were to define it as cheating.
When the researchers analyzed all the data, three clear categories emerged. The first was sexual and erotic interactions, which were rated about 93% likely to be considered cheating. These included everything from intercourse to sexting, and both men and women rated these behaviors highly, though women rated them slightly higher overall. The second category was close relationship behaviors, which averaged about 42% on the cheating scale. These included holding hands, going to dinner, sharing secrets, and offering financial support, essentially the gray area where most relationship conflicts occur. It's easy to see how one person might view these actions as harmless friendship, while another might see them as crossing a line. Partners with attachment anxiety were especially likely to see these close relationship behaviors as cheating, whereas more secure individuals viewed them as normal social interactions. The third category was casual social interactions, brief hugs, friendly jokes, or discussing work problems, and only about 11% of people viewed these as cheating. So, what does all this mean for you and your relationship? First, have the conversation. Don't assume your partner defines cheating the same way you do. In this study, ratings for cheating ranged anywhere from 9% to 98%, depending on the behavior, showing just how much variation exists. What feels innocent to you could feel like betrayal to your partner. Second, try to understand both your own and your partner's attachment style. If you often worry about your partner's friendships or casual interactions, it doesn't necessarily mean you're controlling. You might just have higher attachment anxiety. Recognizing and communicating about it is key to preventing unnecessary conflict. Lastly, always consider context and intensity. A work dinner is very different from a romantic one on one dinner, and a quick hug is not the same as a long, intimate embrace. And yes, gender plays a role too. Women in this study were more likely to classify a wider range of behaviors as cheating, not just emotional ones. Of course, a small caveat. This study focused on American college students with an average age of 19. The results might differ for older adults, married couples, or people from different cultural backgrounds, but the takeaway remains the same. Cheating isn't black and white. It exists on a continuum, and where you draw the line depends on your gender, attachment style, and personal experiences. Behaviors that seem harmless to you might feel threatening to your partner, and that doesn't mean either of you is wrong. It simply means you need to talk about it. So, sit down with your partner and discuss what infidelity means to each of you. Go through these 27 behaviors and identify which ones are red flags in your relationship. If you care about your relationship and your sex life, make sure to subscribe because here you'll learn everything you need to know about your body, sex life, relationships, and overall health. And as always, remember to take care of yourself because you're worth it.